so much for coming this evening. It's been a great evening of masterclasses, and I have a very important person to bring onto the stage. So you've seen her clothing on Samantha Cameron, Michelle Obama, pretty much any first lady that is on TV, you've probably seen her clothing on them, so you know that she's a big deal, and she's also a really big sweetheart. So I would love to introduce to you this evening Roksanda Ilinc. I hope I didn't kill the last name. Roksanda! Hey!
Something magical. It's in the air, it's in my blood, it's rushing on. I don't need no reason.
Doesn't she look beautiful? Look at this dress. Jeez. I'm collecting it when she goes back. Oh. She doesn't know. All right, so let's have a seat and ask you a whole bunch of questions. We have about an hour to get through. So welcome to Lagos.
Thank you.
Yeah?
What a wonderful, wonderful welcome. Thank you all.
Is this your first time on the continent?
No, I've been to Africa before, but it's
Okay.
first time in Lagos.
Okay, great, great. Give her a big Lagos welcome, Lagos. So Roksanda is quite a big deal in the UK, which is where you're based. That's where you have your clothing line and your home and all that. But you're originally from Serbia.
Yes, I'm originally from Belgrade, from Serbia, and I went to London about 20 years ago
Okay.
to finish my master's degree in fashion.
Okay, so let's start with that. I want to start with when you were back home and you were maybe trying to be a student, you were very interested in fashion, but I guess Serbia might be a little bit like the Nigerian climate now. It's not like everyone is rushing for fashion jobs. No one is, it's not the biggest profession out there. So you're interested in fashion, but you don't exactly have an outlet for your creative expression. How did you manage to work your way into getting a clothing label in London, nonetheless?
Yes, it's very actually interesting story, I must say, and also story that sometimes when you love something and believe in something so much, you simply almost can't run away from it. And I think what is interesting that being in Serbia and growing up in Serbia, I was always inspired by fashion. Even as a little girl, I was, changing my dresses and trying to. Sorry, I'm hearing a huge echo from myself.
We have to compete with those guys next to. Oh, are you talking about the feedback? Just
Okay.
Just a little louder.
So basically, I was always interested in fashion, but fashion wasn't, as you mentioned earlier, necessarily profession that could exist independently in Belgrade at the time.
Right.
So being young, independent designer wasn't really an option. So instead of just studying fashion, I started to study architecture, which was my second love.
Okay.
But I just couldn't simply run away from fashion because every time, instead of going to architecture lecture, I would skip to fashion lecture and buy the fashion magazines, etc. So going through those fashion magazines at the time, I discovered that all designers that I loved at the time are coming from the same school, which is St. Martin's in London.
Central St. Martin's.
Yes, and I also realized that they're all coming from the same course that is run by incredible Louise Wilson. And I realized that that can't be coincidence. There must be something that she's offering that is very, very different. And
Right.
I thought I should just buy my ticket, go to London, apply for this school, because at the time, just to put things in a perspective, there was no social media, you couldn't get information as easy as you can now. So I thought that the best way to find everything out would be to go there, take exam, and just see if I can do it or not.
Wow.
And I must say, at the time, it was really just a dream. I really did not expect that I'm going to get accepted, because obviously, coming from Serbia, from country that is not at the forefront of fashion, country that has many, many qualities, but maybe fashion is not something that we are strongest at.
Yeah.
And I thought at the same time, I have to take this opportunity, I have to try and do it, because otherwise I will regret all of my life.
Right, right.
And I'm really glad I took that chance.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Here I am.
We are all glad you took that chance. All right, so you explained that you were interested in getting into fashion, so you absorbed the magazines. You figured out where you could possibly go to school and get a degree in what you were interested in, and then you went to London. So now you're in London, and you're working on a whole bunch, but you studied architecture. So let's talk a little bit about your architectural side. Also because we know that she has a building, her store in the UK was designed in part by her and David Adjaye. Do any of you guys know David Adjaye out here? Do you people know Alara? You know Alara? The person that designed that building, that's David Adjaye. He also helped design her building in the UK. He's a big time architect. And he's, one of us, so we should be proud. So let's talk about architecture and fashion. And how do you know David Adjaye? Did you guys go to school together, or?
Oh, I wish, no. No,
how did that collaboration come about?
So basically, when I came to London, at some point, me and my husband had this incredible space in King's Cross that was quite kind of open and beautiful space to kind of transform. And me studying architecture, I was very in tune of who the new young architects are. And that's how I discovered David. At the time,
Okay.
David wasn't so well known.
Okay.
He was already kind of known in architectural
About
circles.
how many years back was this?
Oh gosh, maybe 15 or,
Oh, wow.
or
Okay.
even more.
Okay.
And so we approached him, and he was at a certain crossroad in his career when he was stopping to make actually private houses, and he was moving into more kind of like much larger buildings. And I remember originally his team said, listen, we are not quite sure he's going to find the time to do this, but of course come for a meeting and let's see if David might change his mind. And I think when we met, it was immediately this kind of incredible meeting of two minds who are kind of thinking the same, because
Yeah.
obviously I studied architecture, and all my references like Donald Judd and Helio Tisica and Marcel Breuer, and I mean, you guys know what I'm talking
No
about.
idea. I have no idea what you're talking about. Are there any architects in the building? Oh, well, maybe he does. He's probably the only one who knows what we're talking about.
Marcel
All right.
Breuer, yes. And he said, wow, those are all my favorite artists and architects, and let's try to definitely make this project. Let's try to make it alive. And it became one of the most incredible projects. The house that David designed was called The Lost House.
The Lost House.
The Lost House in a King's Cross, and it was, I think, the most copied house.
Oh, really? Well, that's
Yes,
great.
So yes, that's how we met. And then many years later, when opportunity in a Mount Street happened, and that wonderful space that I managed to get, and he was literally the only architect that I wanted to use for that space. And
Cool.
at that point, he was very busy. He had several practices throughout the world, but we go a long way back. So he said,
Yeah.
of course, we have to do this together.
So if you guys are in the UK, you definitely have to check out her store, which is an architectural marvel as well. Okay, so still on the topic of architecture, which is what you studied,
Yes.
I can see that your garments have a bit of an architectural situation to them. They're like 3D. This is a great example, but she has done a lot of work, collaborations with other artists. The one I'm most excited about is Lululemon.
Yes, yes.
So they are well known for doing stretchy athletic wear. You guys know athletic wear, gym wear. So imagine taking gym wear, normal tracksuits and hoodies, and turning it into something like this. So she had them with puffy sleeves, they were flowing, and this is gym wear. So let's talk about how you apply your background into the construction of your garments and the colors you use, because they're also quite colorful.
Yes, well, the color is something that I'm really taking from back home. We are also a country that has lots of sun and color, and a strong color. The poppy color was always there through my childhood. And when I came to London, I realized that that's not the case necessarily.
It's not very sunny in London.
No, it's not very sunny, and designers were not gravitating towards the color. And
okay, it was too much for them?
somehow it wasn't at the time as popular, I would say.
Okay.
So unless you were doing prints, color wouldn't necessarily be such a strong point in your collections. And I realized that that's something that is making me different, that has a very strong point of difference. And it's also very close to my heart and something that I'm very familiar with. I also love color personally, and I think that color can bring so much happiness and love in our lives. And you know, when you put a colorful dress on, somehow your spirits are brought up
Brightens
too.
you up.
And I started to use that purposely as a very, very strong tool in my collections, and I started to juxtaposition very unusual colors together, colors that people normally would never put together, colors that I would usually start, you know, and being inspired from art pieces or just walking in London and from even like a building sites, seeing like interesting, unusual combination. And I wanted to bring all of that in my work, and people really started to respond positively towards this. And at some point when I actually wanted to have a collection that doesn't have much color, I stopped myself and I said, no, hold on.
Something's wrong here.
Yes, something's wrong. You can't let this go.
Yeah.
And really now I'm really known for the color, amongst other things, obviously, but I think color is probably the first thing that comes to mind.
I remember I see a lot of pinks or pink and reds, bright pinks and reds.
Yes.
Okay, so talking about your clothing, let's talk about some of the more famous people who've worn your clothing, because they're the best billboards, international billboards for your brand. So how did you go about clothing Michelle Obama? What was that like? Or did she just buy the clothes, or did you meet her, or how does that work?
Well, this is a bit of a professional secret, so I'm not quite sure I can share it with such a small audience.
Please share, tell us.
But what I can say is that, you know, the moment that I really felt, sorry, actually, to start from the beginning, you, as a designer, you always push yourself to do better, to do more. You never think that there is a moment when actually you finally had it, or that
you've
things are going
made
to
it.
become easier, because you always feel I can do better. There is something, there is another hill that I need to cross and conquer. And I think the moment when Michelle actually wore me was the moment when I could just tap myself on the shoulder and say, something is happening. It seems that I am doing something right, because this was at the time when they basically had when U.S. had the first state visit from Chinese president.
Okay.
It was during the first term of presidency, and it was really, really big moment, because so Michelle chose to wear a very unknown designer that is not based in US, that is based in the UK, and she just simply fell in love with the dress. It wasn't about making a statement with who she's wearing, or you know, doing it for any other reason than that she was really, really in love with the dress. And as I said, I watched that in my office. We were watching it on a screen, and we were all so excited and so proud. And it's a very special moment that I will remember for.
Have you had any other moments in your career where you've seen your clothing and just been like, oh, look at that? Like for anyone, not even a celebrity, maybe even a model or a showcase that you had.
Yes, that happens quite a lot. And with many different people, you know, particularly when you see people that you don't necessarily expect. Like, for example, I had a few quite older ladies that unexpectedly were wearing me. And just seeing that on kind of very diverse group of women. My clothes is worn by everybody, women of all ages, and living geographically in many different countries and in many different climates. And I think just when you see that diversity, it's something that makes me really proud. Seeing my daughter wearing my dresses makes me really proud. So I think what is important when you see that they're getting another life, that clothes gets another life with the wearer, and that they do have a life. They're not just hanging on the rails.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so like I said earlier, you're from Serbia. We all know this. And so you have a multicultural background, a little bit more than those who were just born in the UK, because you immigrated there. And a lot of us can attest to some of these stories of being immigrants or being foreigners in a different place and having a different mentality than those who are originally there. Does that inform the way you make your clothing? Do you think the fact that you are Serbian and you grew up there and you had all this experience there, does that make your clothing different, or do you just pull from different places?
Yes, definitely does. And I think it's very important to keep your background. Where are you coming from?
Yeah.
That's your point of difference. That's who you are. I think you should never run away from it, on the contrary. And what incredible Louise Wilson, my tutor at St. Martin's, actually taught me was to look inside of myself, to realize who I am, and to bring
Bring it out.
Exactly, to bring it out. And it's really interesting because while I was in Serbia, because besides of architecture, I also studied Faculty of Applied Arts that has fashion as one of the subjects.
Sorry, what? Faculty of Applied Arts?
Applied Arts.
What exactly is that? Just break it down for us.
Strange name. Basically, it combines art with applied art, and applied art, it's actually design. So it's fashion, it's interior design, it's everything that...
Product design.
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
okay.
So, as I said, being back in Belgrade, all the time I was trying to run away what my country is about. I wanted to rebel, I wanted to create something different, I wanted to find something different, and I was very much looking at what's happening elsewhere. And then, interestingly, when I went, it took me to go back to where that elsewhere is, which is London, the place where everything starts, where you are like literally on the forefront of all ideas. And to realize that only by bringing ideas from back home, I can make a difference, and I can say something different. And I think what I do at the moment, it's very much a merge of me, as a person living in Belgrade, and me as a person living in London. So it's, you can see contradictions, very many contradictions that are joined together and are kind of existing in harmony.
Yeah. All right, so talking about your multicultural background and just multicultural sensitivities. So those who have been to different countries or traveled around, you know that you need to be sensitive when you're dealing with other ethnicities or people who are different from you, because we're not all the same, right? Especially, our backgrounds, our ethnicities, the countries we come from. Now, the fashion world, it seems, is very, how do you put it? It's very one way. It's not very all-inclusive. We've had quite a few people have master classes, and they were talking about how non-inclusive the fashion industry can be, And then you see instances where these major fashion houses commit these huge cultural blunders, Let's see. For example, there was the issue with Dior. Dior came out with a perfume. Johnny Depp was promoting it, but they called it Sauvage. Johnny Depp was dancing in Native American cultural attire, and it caused a firestorm online. People were enraged. They thought it was culturally insensitive to the Native Americans, and Dior had to pull it down. That's one instance. We've also had instances with Gucci, for instance. I think it was earlier this year when they came out with a turtleneck sweater that had big red lips, and it was all black, which it definitely resembled some racist iconography from the US's past. Of course, that caused a firestorm and they had to pull it down. So what do you think can curb these kinds of mistakes? Because obviously these brands aren't trying to just market to themselves, It's a situation where they made a mistake and someone didn't catch it before it went out to the floor. So with these big brands, what do you think that they can do to be more inclusive when it comes to different ethnicities so that they don't make the same types of mistakes? Very long question. Girl, I had to set that up.
Very long question. And I'm so small compared to those big brands that I guess they should be giving me advice.
Yeah, well, we don't have anyone else to ask.
Not the other way around. But I think it's really interesting what you're pointing out.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we point out those things and that we say, hey, hold on, stop. This is not right. This is wrong. Because I think the news and information are traveling very quickly now, and they travel to the furthest part of the globe from where that information originally started. And therefore, I think it's important to take things really, really seriously. And often people are unaware. They don't know that they're hurting somebody. They don't know what certain things mean simply because maybe they don't live in a town's diverse enough, or they're not exposed to diversity as much as, you know, I'm lucky to be in London. But I think, nevertheless, it's important to have somebody in-house that can monitor this, because fashion is not there to hurt people at all. And nobody wants to feel like that. And so I would just, I mean, that would be my advice, to have a person. And I think in time that we live in, it's important to have somebody that is monitoring this, and it's important to bring this to everybody to see and to protest against. And I think that lately fashion has changed a lot positively, really a lot. I've been there for more than 10 years, and I could see that change slowly happening, starting, and you know, I can see the good things coming from it. And of course it's slow. It was a long time coming. It was meant to happen much earlier, but it is happening. So now, even again, for example, going back to age, it's very normal to see older ladies, like, and when I say older, like 80 plus, 90, modeling on a catwalk, which before would be unheard of.
I've never seen that. Really? That's happening?
Yes.
That's dope.
Yes, and you know, like women in a different sizes, different genders, everything. So I think all of this is very, very good, because also we have to be aware that if the things are happening in London and Paris and Milan, it takes a long time for them then to have the effect in a smaller cities, etc.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So let's lighten it up a little bit. So your clothes are really fun and whimsical, it seems. Are you very fun and whimsical? Like, what do you do on, what do you do when you're not in your studio? Like, are you a sports buff? Or do you like to sit at home and read? Or are you like someone who like tinkers with toys and makes little, I don't know, what are you like when you're not working?
Well, I think when you're as a designer, I think that part of your personality comes through. I guess that people can probably guess slightly what I'm into.
So you are fun and whimsical.
So yeah, I guess so. I love art.
Yeah.
I also love to spend time with my family. I think that's a very important moment I wanted to mention, because, you know, work is one thing, but when you have fringe time, it's so important to use it with your friends and family, and I don't think they should ever be forgotten. No. So, yes.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk the highlights of your careers and the challenges. Let's start with the challenges. What are some of the challenges that you have had to scale through in order to get where you are? And how have you overcome them?
There were quite many, to be honest, like starting with business side, because
on the business side,
yes, because like I was trained as a designer. You spend quite a lot of time learning about the design, the processes, the fabrications, etc. But you don't learn about business.
The business, yeah.
And then when you start fashion house, you realize that it's kind of 50-50.
You need the business.
You need a business. And if you don't have that side, simply you're going to disappear sooner or later. So that was kind of like a hard learning curve, and I was lucky enough at the beginning to start with a very small brand. Well, it wasn't a brand immediately. It was just a young designer trying to say something different. And my first show had only 13 pieces, 13 dresses. And it was really organically built for quite a while. So I went through this whole process on learning on my own mistakes, my friends' mistakes, the mistakes from things that I was reading about. And then I think when, you know, I reached slightly different level, then I got help, and my lovely CEO is here with us tonight. I think that balance between creativity and business is very important.
Yeah, very important.
Yes.
The business side of fashion, like you said, it's not often taught. Do you have any advice? Because I'm sure there are quite a lot of people who are interested in fashion or fashion designers themselves. And this is something that they come up against too. Creatives, they know how to create, but the business side of how to manage things. So any advice on how to
Well, I think
help yourself?
I think it's important that you have slightly that business sense as well, like more or less, but it has to exist in some sense or form, because without that business idea, as I said, you would sooner or later disappear. It's not all about creating beautiful pieces and pieces that might hang in museums. It's also about women wearing them. So I think you have to have that. And the second thing, it's also surrounding yourself with a team that really understands you. That
So get a team, yeah.
Exactly, that know why you're doing certain things, and you have to understand them as well. And I think that balance between those two things is very, very important, and understanding.
Yeah. So any other challenges? So there was the business side that
there
was
was
an
a business.
issue.
The second challenge is definitely time. I
Time.
think the way that fashion works, it's really, really fast. And obviously we all want to offer as many new designs and creations as quickly as possible. But that comes as a certain price, because now we have at least 4 collections a year.
Jeez.
And that's just like a pure minimum. So you're constantly chasing your tail and making several collections at the same time. So you know, what I took, decision to actually slow this down. So we decided to go back to having 2 collections a year.
A year, okay.
And I think the different designers are dealing with it differently. But time is definitely the most luxurious things in fashion as well.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the highlights of your career.
Well,
Any awards?
As I said earlier, it's really hard to kind of pinpoint, because I'm the person that it's always striving to do better things. Seeing all the incredible women wearing me was certainly one of the highlights. Opening my store in Mao Street was another one. And I think, just kind of managing to get where I am at the moment, to create all that is created with the brand and to expand, all of those are in some way the highlights. But again, I'm the person that always likes to have more highlights, so.
Yeah. Okay, so there's been a lot of discussion about sustainable fashion. Fashion that isn't just wear and throw away. The planet is going through a whole lot. Everyone's trying to recycle, climate change, But with clothing, how do you tackle this sustainability issue? Not wasting and not using dyes that poison the fish, or I don't know. How do you guys work around this sustainability issue?
Yes, it's another issue that didn't exist before at all, and I'm again very happy that it's in a spotlight and that everybody are trying to do something. I think it's important that every brand is doing something, and we don't have to think that we need to do everything at the same time. So, for example, in a case in our case, our first challenge was to change the plastic packaging that is used quite a lot.
That's pretty good.
Into
so do you use paper now?
No, we use degradable. The same with the plastic hangers. Also the waste of the fabric that was ordered for previous seasons that just kind of sits in somewhere, and it's kind of not used because it belonged to different seasons. We have found a way to use that as well, and also thanks to system, because system is now very open to have the fabrications, to new designs and new reinvented things with all fabrications. So that's one of the things that we are doing as well.
Recycling.
And of course, sourcing the fabrics that are sustainable is very important. So that is another element that we are doing. Making things closer to London. Which is another thing, because of course there is a carbon footprint that nobody thinks about. So sometimes you think, okay, I'm going to use that, it's sustainable, but what about the transport? So there is so much. But as I said at the beginning, it's very important that progress is made, and that everybody's making that progress, no matter how small you think you are or how big you think you are. I think it's important that we're all jointly making some changes.
Yeah. Okay, so what inspires you? What do you get inspired by? Are you on the gram looking? First of all, do you do social media? Are you a social media?
Yes.
All right. So are you inspired by things from the internet or social media? Or do you still read a lot of magazines? Or do you go to the clubs and see different, I don't know, how do you get inspiration?
I think social media is definitely not a place where I get inspired. And if I have to give advice to anybody, it would be do not get inspired by social media. Social media, it's more for information, I would say.
Okay.
And then inspiration should really come from the very, like a big pool of many, many different things. So, for example, in my case, as you can tell, usually it is architecture, it is artists, it is a beautiful imagery that I would find in like old bookstore or in a movie. It can really be anything. But then I like to mix all of that with life, really.
Okay.
So I get inspired with my friends, with the people who surround me, with the nature, with just like a simple walk from my house to my studio. I think as a designer, you're constantly open to everything, and you're constantly taking all those ideas like a sponge inside of you, and then you filter them, and then it comes as something that is uniquely yours.
Okay, cool. I could sit here asking you a million questions, but we don't have that much time, and I know you guys in the audience want to ask Roksanda a couple questions, right? Anyone? All right, so let's open up the... Yeah, there we go.
Oh, this is great. Normally nobody has any questions. So
What? They'll keep us here all night. All right, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Charles.
Okay, Charles, the noise next door is quite loud, so we're competing, so use your voice, Bele.
All right, my name is Charles, and I want to ask, like, there is so much pressure for designers to churn out collections and pieces season after season. And most times, you know, your best collection doesn't really translate to the greatest selling collection. So what advice do you have in terms of that to young designers who are trying to make it in industry when it comes to sales?
He's asking about what the pressure to make collections back to back. So what advice do you have for designers who want to make sales but are still really under pressure to put out a lot of product, like because they put out a lot of product, maybe it doesn't necessarily sell. So any advice, right?
Yes. Well, I think that's one of the challenges that everybody are facing, no matter how big the houses are. As I said earlier, the time pressure. And I think what is very important, not to lose your craft, not to lose yourself, not to in a speed that is that the fashion is working on now. It's important to kind of slow down or stay in the speed. Everybody are different, but just not to lose what you're about and that craft. And I wouldn't advise anybody to make things just for sake of sales, either how they look or the speed or the quantity. I think it's important that every piece has its own identity. And I think one thing that I learned in my career is that you can't fool the customer. No matter what you do, when customer comes, they will feel if that garment, dress, outwear, whatever piece it is, if it has your soul, if it's really done with a love, or if it's just done for sake of being sold, which kind of never works.
Okay, all right. So thank you for that one. Round of applause. Anyone else? More questions?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Romeo Chukwumeka Butcher. I want to ask a question. Please, how can African designers be on top of their games to compete with other countries? Because I noticed that most of the things we are doing here, 80% are more like copy.
Are more like
we are copying each other, like recreating.
Okay.
So please, how can we compete, and what are the things that we are lacking that are actually making us stand behind instead of stepping forward and also taking the fashion industry like other countries?
Well, I think that's a very similar question that I had when I was living in Serbia. And I think that's probably the reason why I tried to rebel against everything that was fashionable in Serbia at the time. And I tried to create something very, very, very different, because you always feel that you're slightly behind and you're not quite where you should be. again, I think it's very important to look within yourself and not to listen what other people are saying, and to stay strong to your vision, to every season make it better and better and better. And I think that individual progress, it's much more important than conquering something overnight. So if you find your own voice, first, sorry, I forgot to say one thing. It's very important to be informed about everything that is happening in the world. So fashion-wise, exactly what went on each catwalk, even the labels that you don't like. And then once you know what's happening, then you take everything that is you, that you believe in, and you're just kind of making it better season after season after season. And I'm really a believer that if you have something special to say, it will be heard sooner or later. Sometimes it takes longer time if you're not in the middle of the world. Like I always think that London is the middle of fashion.
Yeah, it is quite the spotlight.
It does now with the social media. There is a way that those things are heard. So I think you just have to stay focused.
Stay focused and stay consistent, right?
Consistent and true to yourself.
And true to yourself. All right. Well, thank you for that one. Hand of applause. Any other questions?
Hello, good evening. My name is Tochi.
Good evening.
Thank you. My question is very close to the one he asked, and you have given us an advice. But I want to know, for your brand, can you please tell us or share with us what you do to the clothings after each season? Like when you prepare for the next season, what do you do with the remaining ones? Do you recreate them? Do you sell them do like a sales? How do you take them off your studio? How do you take them off? That is what I want to know.
Okay, so that's about the clothing.
Yeah,
right?
when it's done with the
Yes.
season, how do you get rid of the clothes?
Yes.
Do you do a sale?
Well, I
or-
only have one retail store.
Okay.
So normally my wholesaler accounts have that problem.
Okay, the
what
ones
they
you
do with
give
the
your clothes
and then with my clothing, we usually go on sale, obviously,
Okay.
as all the stores.
Okay.
And then we also have like a separate sales that happen once a year.
Okay.
With kind of older seasons.
So sales are necessary, ladies and gentlemen. Reduce your price small. It's not a bad thing. Just for a little time. All right, any more questions? All right, hello.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Tochiku. I want to ask, as a professional, you're an architect that transited to fashion. So I want to know, how did you manage the transition stage? I'm a civil engineer too, and I'm crazy about fashion.
You're a
But it's
civil
challenging.
engineer?
Yes.
All right.
So I want to know, how did you transit? How did you break through? That's what I want to know.
I was studying, I was lucky to study actually two separate things at the same time, which was architecture, which I was hoping it's going to be my vocation when I graduate, and fashion, that was under Applied Arts
At
College.
the same
Sorry.
time.
So I did them both at the same time. So actually, I must say, for me, transition wasn't as drastic as it sounds, because I always had that fashion training as well. But it was definitely, when I came to London, it was definitely difficult to learn certain things because they were very different than in my country.
Yeah.
And then that happened through my master's degree.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. More questions.
Thank you for coming. My name is Azi. I have two questions to ask you.
All right. You might have to speak up. This guy
Okay,
is
I have
really
two
booming.
questions to ask you. The first one is, how do you think a brand focused on maternity workwear can successfully penetrate the ready-to-wear scene?
Ooh. Okay, one more time, because that is a very good question.
How do you think a brand focused on maternity workwear can successfully penetrate the ready-to-wear scene?
Okay, so
Maternity.
a maternity workwear brand. How do you think that they can penetrate the fashion scene?
Maternity workwear.
Maternity workwear.
Wow, interesting
I
question.
know, it's like, okay,
Yes.
yeah. You do have a couple months before your maternity leave, so might as well style it out in the office.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know what? I don't think that you should think. This is just my advice. This is another thing. I can, tell you my advice, but everybody are different, and everything is in a different circumstances. So don't take it for granted. But I think that maybe you don't have to look just as a maternity wear. I think that you can maybe broaden it up to everything, but as long as the shapes are such that they can fit, maternity and
Pregnant
women who are
ladies as
pregnant.
well.
And actually, interestingly, in my designs, I use lots of loose shapes, and I didn't necessarily think of them as maternity, but I started to get quite a strong customer base, women that are pregnant, which I think it's great.
Yeah.
But those dresses were not originally thought of as maternity at all, so I almost feel you need to approach them as something fashionable that can kind of also go and be worn by women who are not pregnant, but can accommodate pregnant women.
So that's really
Hope that
smart.
helps.
Just instead of just targeting the pregnant people, target other people, and then you get more money. Look at that.
The second question is, how did you carve a niche for yourself in a saturated industry through a digital space?
Yeah, pre-digital.
Well, it's really, yes, it's hard. Those things come with lots of work and lots of people who support you and who are around you. I think it's very important to support yourself with the people that believe in you, that are your champions, that are championing you, either helping you financially or helping you through advices or simply helping you by promoting you and wearing you. Design and your point of view, it's the starting point. You can't achieve anything unless you have something very, very incredible to say. And then also, but that's not enough. Then, as I said, also you surround yourself with almost like a support system.
Support group. All right, really good questions. Thank you for that one. Maybe a couple more. Hey, hi, lady in red.
Hi.
Hi.
Roksanda. My name
Hello.
is Fumis. I have quite like 3 questions here. Do you make your fabrics?
Ooh,
Or
good
do
question.
you source? How do you source for your fabrics? First of all, thank you.
So basically, I design all of my fabrics. When you're in that luxury sector, I think it's very important that everything is unique.
You control, yeah.
Yes. So basically, some of the fabrics, type of the fabrics I'm buying, but the colors are all bespoke. So we have some, we call them like a basic or a core fabrics that are like silks and wools. That exists out there, but for that particular season, we come with a color palette that is quite Roksanda, and then all those colors are specially dyed. And then also there is another section of fabrications that is completely, like for example, the one that I'm wearing, that is completely done from scratch. So that's more like a jacquards and embroidery and prints. And they are all done in-house. The original ideas start from in-house. They're kind of masterminded by me and my team. And then we develop them with different suppliers.
Okay, thank you. That answers my second question, which says, are you running a luxury brand? Obviously, you do run a
Oh,
luxury
yes,
brand.
girl. The first ladies wear it. They only wear luxury. Hello.
Okay. What's your pricing compared to the general market?
I think we are very well priced. I think very competitive.
All right.
I think with the pricing, that's a good question because when you start as a young designer, you're kind of slightly unaware where your pricing needs to be. And you have 2 ways, either to calculate according to exactly what you spend, meaning how much the fabrics are costing, the production and everything else. And because you're small, usually this is really, really high. The price is really high because obviously you're almost making one-off pieces and everything is expensive. And that's actually how I started. But then there is a different way. When you compare yourself to the market, you make sure that what's out there, it's sitting with everybody else. And when people go, particularly now on internet, and can quickly source anything and compare the prices, that you're exactly where you should be. So we have this scheme that is called like a pricing architecture, which means that we're kind of covering different aspects of pricing that start from something that is reasonable to something that is really like literally like haute couture.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen often because I'm ready to wear brand, but sometimes I have a piece that is like a haute couture. Like once I had a dress that had 17,000 bubbles blown with air. Sewn onto the dress.
17,000 bubbles?
Hand sewn onto the dress.
Who hand sewn those 17?
Exactly.
Wow, and that was a one-off.
That was
couture
yes.
tends to be. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
and another question. What advice would you give an affordable luxury market?
What advice would you give an affordable luxury market?
Sir, that was my question, actually.
Okay.
I was going to ask if someone wanted to target an affordable luxury market, like what advice would you give to be able to break in?
In affordable luxury. Well, I think this kind of links to this previous question and a pricing architecture. I think it's very important that you research your competition and that you know exactly what is happening on the market and what the prices are. And then, you take it from there, and then you basically make the pieces that are definitely not couture, not the 17,000 pieces of bubbles. Yes? Okay.
Thank you. Ooh, we got a lot more questions. Okay, where's the next microphone
Good evening,
holder?
everyone.
Hi, good evening.
Dr. Benedicta.
All right.
Yes, a medical doctor.
Hey, Doc.
Fresh. Okay, so I wanted to ask the question concerning how you tag how you put the price tag for your fashion, but someone already asked that question. So concerning the medical field right now, I know most people don't know that medical doctors actually love fashion. So my question is, are there brands, and do you also, target the medical profession in terms of fashion? Thank you.
I don't think I necessarily target any profession. Like I don't have in my mind I'm going to design for lawyers or I'm going to design for doctors or artists. I just do what I love, and I hope that will resonate with women. And when I do and design my pieces, I always have women in mind, and I'm very much women that designs for men. I like to call myself like that because I really do always question our lifestyles, what women like to show, what they like to hide. But I wouldn't say that I target or specifically think of any of professions as such. I just hope that you guys can like it and can wear it.
And would you advise that too, not targeting specific? Would that be beneficial? Just like the other guy was asking, just targeting specific, or should you cast your net quite wide as a designer?
I think you just need to do what you love, and I think that designing is about creating, and it's not so much about the planning and
strategy.
It needs to be free. It needs to be spontaneous and intuitive.
Okay, thank you for that question.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, I'm OC.
Hi.
I have a couple of questions to actually ask you.
Okay.
One, what makes your design unique compared to other designers in the industry?
Okay, we should be asking this some really strict fashion editors.
Should I answer this for you?
Exactly.
I can do this.
But I think it's several things. Like from my perspective, it's that element of protection and shelter. I think when you wear my designs, as a woman, you really feel sheltered and protected, and I think that's more emotional connection. And then also it's in terms of visible DNA, that it would be a color, it would be a sculpture, very bold use of colors as well, and shapes. So I think those are kind of 3-4 elements that define my designs.
Nice. And I think that's quite interesting. You said a woman will feel protected and, what was the other? And sheltered. And that's an interesting way of approaching presenting yourself, Because as a woman, oftentimes you can feel vulnerable or not protected, especially if you're wearing really nice clothing or really revealing clothing. So I think that's quite poignant.
Yes. When I say protected and sheltered, sometimes when you think about my dresses, they're quite loud. They're full of color, full of shapes,
voluminous.
but you still feel that you're yourself.
Yeah.
That you are almost putting better version of yourself when you put a dress on, and I think that's very important.
I totally get it. All right, so we have time for. Okay, we'll take one more question from you, and then we have to spread it around because we have. Oh, last question. Sorry, guys, he took up all the time. Look at how everyone's looking at him. I'm just joking. We've run out of time.
Okay, so how were you able to manage your customer base during your difficult times as a fashion designer?
I think it's very important to have a strong connection with your customers, to know who they are, not to imagine your customers and think, oh, I would like this type of woman to be my customers, but actually to know exactly who your customer is. And then as long as you know who they are, I think the times are not as hard as they seem, because I think you know who you're talking to, you know what that woman wants, you know her lifestyle, and you won't have as many problems as somebody else that does.
Yeah. All right, Roksanda, that was awesome. Can we have a round of applause for all the people who asked questions and all the wonderful answers? So I know time flies when you're having fun, right? We've been having a great time here with Roksanda. So great to have you in Lagos.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. And do you have any last words of advice for all of us, any of us?
I would just like to say that I'm so amazed by how incredibly glamorous women here are.
Yeah.
And just my advice would be to stay always like that, positive and beautiful, and super dressed up.
I love it. Round of applause for Roksanda this evening. Thank you so much for coming. Beautiful.